Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the July 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. Deputy Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Orth?
Here.
Trustee Whitaker?
Here.
Trustee Fowler?
Here.
Trustee Gallen?
Here.
Trustee Yedis?
Here.
Trustee Elfman?
Here.
President Minder?
Here. First order of business this evening is public comment, and just to remind everyone that we would like you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you have heard your question or concern already raised, I encourage you to let the next person speak. Tonight is very important. It is the first night that this board will be able to sit together and discuss TIF amongst ourselves, and I want to make sure that I leave us plenty of time to do that, for you all to hear the presentation that we'll be giving and listen to my fellow trustees discuss the issue. So, with that being said, if you would like to make public comment, please approach the podium, give us your name and address, and we will get underway.
First of all, I don't even understand why Northfield is even entertaining the TIF district. There is not, lack of developers that love to come here and do it. Basically, when you are doing it, it's freezing the taxes, but impact is going to be there on schools and every other aspect of it. So where are the money is going to come if they are frozen? From other taxpayers. Besides, they will compete with the private property owners for the lower rent to compete with them, because they don't have to pay for several years the taxes. On the other hand, they should be charged impact fee for every unit they may build. Several villages are doing it. Naperville, Highland Park, Aurora, Homer Green, lots of people are doing. And I think that's the right way of doing. Let them pay the impact fee. It will eventually go to their development cost and either buyer or rental.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name or your address, so I just
My name is Vic Mehta. I live on Harp Road, 815 Harp Road.
Okay.
I'm a resident for almost 53 years in there.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Charlie Pick, 365 Riverdale Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As you know, I am the public member of the Joint Review Board, and I'll do my best to represent the public interest as well as that of District 29 for the school board on which I serve. I promise to be under 3 minutes. I don't want to rehash the JRB meeting that happened a couple of weeks ago. Suffice to say that the school district's position remains officially opposed, unfortunately, to the TIF, consistent with the report completed by our consultants at Pilewski and presented at the meeting. We don't believe the statutory requirements to create a TIF district have been met. There are also multiple financial alternatives to incentivize occupancy at the former Mariano's, sales tax abatement being one of the most powerful and immediate. But tonight I want to talk numbers, because we haven't really talked specific numbers up to this point. So we don't have any, the school boards have not received any specific offer of compensation or reimbursement under the proposed TIF. What the village has signaled via the redevelopment report is the creation of a $15 million reimbursement fund, which is shown as a single line item in the proposed redevelopment budget presented in June. So that figure would cover all 141 properties in the TIF for 23 years or longer if extended. No detail or supporting documents around the creation of this figure or other budget figures have been presented up to this point. We've received an offer to meet with the village after the TIF is ratified to talk about new developments and finances and TIF duration, et cetera. But you can imagine our hesitation to wait on getting specific about reimbursement until after ratification, when the village kind of holds all the cards. So
I'm just going to interrupt you. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I don't believe we asked you to have a meeting after the TIF was ratified. I'm confused by that statement.
I didn't, what did I said that, no, I wasn't referring to
Did
the
I,
meeting.
is that what I heard?
You said that we offered to meet after the TIF was ratified, and nothing has been ratified.
No, but your proposal was to get together post-TIF ratification to talk about shortening the TIF, talking about capital impact, any developments that are over a certain size. That's post-ratification.
Nothing's been ratified.
I understand that.
And that's not what I said in the letter, but be that as it may, we are happy to sit down with the school board at any time that you all would like to get together with us. So I just
Oh.
want to clear that up. So-
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, so in the absence of detailed projections, District 29 has been working on modeling as best we can to try and quantify the TIF impact from just the 92 units at 470 Central, which are in the permit phase. The zoning for that was approved in December and again in May after they added 30 units to the scope. So mind you, this is one of many projects that will be developed in the TIF, but at least there is enough data to come up with some reasonable projections on this single property. So the caveat is that this is a work in progress, and these numbers are preliminary. So imagine if there were no TIF, the projected tax revenue from this single project during the 23-year term for this single property ranges from $7 to $9 million to District 29. Multifamily rental properties are subject to assessed valuation negotiations with Cook County due to vacancy, lease-up timing, and other factors, so that's why there is a range. The projected loss of tax revenue to all school districts, including New Trier and Oakton, is somewhere in the range of $14 to $17 million. We also looked at the potential tax revenue hit for Avoca for the 12 condos under construction at 405 Central. Absent a TIF, that project alone could bring in over $4 million to Avoca during the 23-year term and over $7 million to all schools, including New Trier and Oakton. Thus, the $15 million line item in the SB Friedman redevelopment plan may not even replace lost school revenues for the 92 units, let alone the 12 at 405 Central, and every future project on 141 properties in the proposed TIF. So one closing comment. So from the beginning, I haven't really understood why those kind of pending and under construction projects have been included. And I don't want to misquote you, Trustee Whitaker, but you mentioned something at the last meeting about, should we have a conversation about any carve-outs or exclusions? And I'm not trying to misquote you, but that did not have any follow-up discussion, and maybe there will be tonight. I think it's an interesting idea. The TIF statute was not created to allow municipalities to appropriate funds from imminent developments inside of a TIF district. The statute was created to stimulate developments in economically dead zones where no development would occur but for the use of TIF subsidies. This is not the case for Northfield, particularly along Central Avenue, where the new 2025 zoning is a powerful motivator to developers. Are there other tax properties, and there are other properties in play on Central right now beyond what is public knowledge? The future tax revenues for those 104 units arguably belongs to the school districts and the other 88% of the taxing bodies that collect those funds, as less than 12% of the average tax bill is collected by the Village of Northfield. We can and should have a healthy and open community-wide debate about the TIF, community development, the former Marianos, and school impact. We welcome the chance for a meaningful dialogue and look forward to more candid conversations before and during the next JRB meeting on August 13th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay. Okay, Carol Ritchell, 811 Hap Road. First, thank you for all your work on this. I'm a lifelong resident of Northfield. On behalf of myself, as well as others who are unable to be at tonight's meetings, would you please let us know when answers to questions and concerns submitted to the village board will be provided to us? You have repeatedly and continually invited residents to ask questions and to provide feedback, both in person at village meetings and via email. And we continue to do that. So far, very few answers have been provided, both to that feedback and to let us know the answers to questions and concerns which were submitted to you, the village board. So again, would you please let us know when answers to questions and concerns submitted to you will be provided to us? Specifically, comments and questions posed in the petition submitted to you, questions asked during our public meetings, and emails sent to the V group, to the village board. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna. What's the phrase? Don't confuse me with the facts, I've made up my mind. I really don't want to think that's what's going on here, but sometimes it really just feels like that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For those of you who may not know me, I am Terry Dason, the President and CEO of the Winnetka Northfield Glencoe Chamber of Commerce. I attended the Joint Review Board meeting, and I did not hear a single speaker express support for moving forward with the TIF as proposed. Instead, I heard a compelling presentation from our school districts outlining alternatives to a TIF. We also heard thoughtful comments from local business owners, residents, the Northfield Caucus, the League of Women Voters. The common message was clear. Why is this moving so quickly? And have all of the alternatives been fully explored? This proposal was introduced at the end of April. It has been under public consideration for only about 3 months. During the height of the summer, when many Northfield families are away, not fully engaged in the local issues, I respectfully ask the Village Council to pause and to listen to the voices of your community. Listen to your businesses, listen to your schools, listen to your residents before moving forward with a decision that could have lasting consequences for Northfield. Please take the time to fully evaluate all available options and ensure this is the best path for the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Donald Graff, 1535 Winnetka, northeast corner of Winnetka and Lagoon. Before I begin, I am not going to use the T word in this dissertation. I saw a story from Northfield Living Magazine written by our wonderful historian, Mary Rhodes. In her piece, Northfield, We Did It Our Way, Mary asks a simple question: how did we become the thriving community we are today? And her answer was perfect. She writes, it wasn't pedigreed consultants or outsiders telling us what to do. It was our own talented volunteers who kept stepping up decade after decade to solve problems other communities had years earlier revisited. And what stories sprung up from this? Our forebears were quirky, unconventional, and not shy about sometimes breaking the rules of the normal behavior of other North Shore towns. That's a big reason to celebrate, folks. And thank you, Mary. Is she here? I guess not. Okay, sorry. Now, speaking of history, look around Northfield. We have buildings that have stood among us for generations, buildings that have been remodeled, repurposed, reinvented, and still stand solid, solid as a rock. Think of our Northfield Village Square. Inside that building, historically, there's been Willow Hill Pharmacy, Sure Save Grocery, National Foods, Rosen and Shane Liquors, and smack dab in the middle of that building, in order of appearance, well, we had Danny's Place, Central Cafe, Gully's, Melange, Brasserie Tea, MK Bistro, and now Hap Inn. That's not just a building, that's a timeline. And nearby, we have other historic structures still hosting a bank, a spa, restaurant, shops, exercise studios, even a town hall that originally, I think it was, maybe I'm wrong, was a fire station and a county courthouse on the second floor. Do you see any walls coming tumbling down in here? Nah, neither do I. Now, the foundation is solid. You can remodel, you can redevelop, you can retrofit, you can breathe new life into old bones. So I ask you, and I ask our builders, our planners, our dreamers, would it be too pie in the sky to imagine new projects that honor our history, that reflect our small town values, that keep the spirit of our little Mayberry North alive? Because Northfield is unique. Our history shows that. The pictures on these walls show that. We are quirky. We are unconventional. And yes, we're definitely not shy. So, before we build out like the other suburbs surrounding us, it's a fact, what we have is a strength. My hope, my wish is that businesses wanting to develop here will challenge the suburban status quo, that they will renovate, restore, reinvigorate our long-standing structures wherever possible. And most of all, they will cherish and respect our comfortable corner, our comfortable, you know what? They need to respect our comfortable center of the North Shore. You know why? Nobody puts Northfield in a corner. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sam Tiedemann. I am born and raised in Northfield. I'm a third-generation resident of Northfield. My children are fourth. My family has invested in the industrial and commercial part of Northfield for multiple generations. My grandfather built Northfield Road, which is a large section of the proposed TIF district. So I do not want to give any impression that I am against commercial and industrial use of Northfield. So please put my remarks in that context. I should also say I am on the school board for District 29, but my comments are my own and are not officially endorsed by any other school board members, but my knowledge is coming from that context. I won't repeat a lot of what Charlie said. It's hard for us to estimate the financial impact of the proposed TIF on the school district, but with some numbers, Charlie said that, $7 to $9 million just from the one building that we know about alone. If you take the $175 million proposed total revenue for the life of the TIF, about maybe 50 to 60 million of that would probably go to District 29 in general. It's a little bit hard to know. It depends on tax assessments. It depends on where exactly buildings get built, et cetera. So we can only give rough estimates at this time. But I have to be perfectly clear. These numbers are financially devastating for the operation of District 29. And I'm sure that the same is true for Avoca and New Trier and maybe even Oakton College as well. And that if this TIF passes as is currently designed, that the district would have to either some combination of drastic cuts to the quality of education in this district or do something like a rate referendum or something to generate more revenue. There are no ways around that as far as I can currently understand with the way that this is currently constructed. And there should be no ambiguity about that in what is communicated about the effects that this TIF will have. So I'm also a data scientist at Google. I did a statistical analysis on houses that have sold in the New Trier area and the larger North Shore region as a whole. You can sort of estimate the value that District 29 brings to a housing value by looking at houses that are similar but just across district lines and stuff like that. District 29 commands at least a 2% premium over the other New Trier feeder schools on average. District 29 also commands a 7% at least premium over the average North Shore school district. That yields, if the quality of education or the quality of the attractiveness of D29 were to fall from our exceptional state to even a New Trier average, which is already an extremely high standard, I should say, that would cost the average person about at least 2% or so in house value, and that's about $500,000 a year in recurring tax revenues to the village. If we were to fall to the average of the North Shore region, which is already a high standard too, it would be more like $4 million annually. To harm the ability of the school districts to function is a financial liability to the village itself, and that needs to be fully taken into account. I honestly worry that as this TIF proceeds, there are a couple things that are likely outcomes. Like I said, this is financially devastating to the school districts. The village, or a board member from New Trier High School presented earlier, and she said that New Trier would also likely need to do a rate referendum. So let me be clear, if this TIF passes as is currently designed, taxes will go up on residents of this village one way or another. Probably a combination of D29 needing to make up our lost revenue, New Trier needing to make up its lost revenue. I can't speak for Avoca, but I imagine they're doing the same math themselves. And so to communicate that this will not have any tax effect on residents is honestly just not true. And that really needs to be clearly communicated. This idea that this is tax neutral or that this doesn't increase taxes on residents is not considering the holistic impact of this proposal as currently designed. And I really encourage you to be more honest and direct with residents about that. I also feel like this TIF as currently designed is very liable for a lawsuit to be generated by the schools. I'm not saying this as a threat, but I'm not saying it is not a threat either. In all honesty, I'm trying to be perfectly honest about what's likely to happen if you continue down this road. Our school, New Trier School, are very likely to sue to stop this. And also, I should say, if New Trier needs to raise a tax revenue or a referendum to increase their revenues, that affects the entire New Trier district, not just New Trier, or not just Northfield, the whole New Trier zone. And so they would also have a financial interest to sue, to block, to stop this. So you are setting yourselves up for a massive legal fight. And there are two key vulnerabilities in this as it's currently designed. You need to show that all the properties, not just most, all the properties meet the blighted or conservation status. And you also need to show that the buildings or the development would not happen but for the TIF. And we already heard from the developer of the 92-unit building that they would build this building otherwise. And so that is a direct legal vulnerability of the way that this TIF is currently designed, should a lawsuit come about. If a lawsuit happens, a judge would likely stop this. It would take years, and then Northfield residents would be setting their tax revenue on fire twice, as the schools were paying for a lawsuit and as you guys were paying for a lawsuit. I don't think anyone wants that, but that's a very likely outcome if you continue as designed. And then there are the democratic challenges that could come after that of future elections if residents are not happy. So I really want to be clear. This is financially devastating for the schools. This will lead to higher taxes one way or another to make up for that, and this is highly likely to end up in a Northfield versus Northfield battle unless we can figure out a way to mitigate the things I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chaya Rubenstein, 315 Linder Avenue. I just want to, before I say what I'm going to say, reiterate once again, we are not Northbrook. We are not Glenview. I think Northbrook has a population 3 times ours because I've been reading about their struggles recently, and some of the residents at one of the meetings they've had were overheard to tell one another, and they want to have Pulte builders come and develop some more. And somebody said, and I'm not going to find you the person who said that and quote that, if Pulte can't build in Northbrook, they'll come to Northfield to build. Northfield will let them build. We are tiny 3.23 square mile suburb village. Overbuilding leads to under-resourcing, as you just might have heard the gentleman say. And you might have heard Mr. Pick say the same thing as well. And also, maybe our Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Ms. Dason. Something that I did come here to say after talking to an attorney friend of mine who just mentioned this was that at the Joint Review Board meeting last time, and maybe I didn't see you there, but I know that Trustee Galen was there and Trustee Orth was there, and so a number of you were not. And of course, Village Manager Brennan. And thank you all for being there. For those of you who were not there, and this isn't to excoriate you, just, because like people couldn't come during the day because they were working, but some of you weren't there. I was told that you might want to have this report, and I think maybe I would give it to Melissa to give to you. She would be the person that Mr. Joe Paluski gave from Paluski Financial, LLC, that was prepared for the school districts, Avoca, New Trier Township High School, and Sunset Ridge. So it would be fair for you to see this and read this, because there's a lot of information in there that is in conflict with the information that was given by S.B. Friedman. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for the 3 minutes and for listening to me.
Thank you.
Should I give this to Melissa?
By all means, I wanted to do this. We can start the music.
Hello, Board. Barnaby Dinges, 421 Chapel Hill Lane, co-chair of the HAP Road Committee with Debbie Pappas. And I sat where you sat 5 years ago. I want to sort of maybe put things in a different context. I feel like what we're really talking about is economic development, and that's why I chose to get involved in village government 5 years ago when I went to talk to the caucus about some things that we could consider for Northfield. We're not Northbrook and we're not Glenview, but we are surrounded by Glencoe and Winnetka. We share the same zip code with Winnetka. We're in the 9-3, as I like to say. They have a lot of things in Winnetka we don't have. There's a lot of things in Wilmette we don't have. And I talk to a lot of young families who wonder why they can't have a birthday party with their kids, why they have to go somewhere else. I personally, I want to have a beer along the river. We're a river town that doesn't celebrate the river. We don't even have a sign that says the river runs through our downtown. There are so many things we can do on an economic development. So when people say we're moving too quickly, I say we're moving too slowly, because this discussion started like 40 years ago with the village's approach to economic development. And so I sort of feel like we're at a crossroads now. We can pursue progress or we can accept regress. And let me put that in a little bit of context. The HAP Road report, which I know many of you liked, see it has a nice visual on it, has a visual of a downtown, of people walking and communing and enjoying our downtown. I think what is missing is a vision. If we're going to ask the village to support something, I think the first question you ask is, what do I get for my money? What do you envision? Now, in the city of Chicago, they just passed a $427 million TIF, and it's for all the infrastructure to support the new soccer stadium in the South Loop, where you can say exactly what is the stadium, what's around it, and they're rebuilding a whole neighborhood. So they'll say, yes, we'll spend $427 million so that we can create this whole experience south of the Loop. Very specific. People can say we want to spend the money elsewhere, but they're given a vision of it, and then they can look at the costs. So I do believe this board has a vision, and I look forward to hearing about it. I have so much respect for everyone on this board. Everyone on this board has been endorsed by the caucus and elected by the village. And here you are before us, willing to do the hard work of getting this village what it needs and deserves. That is to be respected, not criticized, not bullied, not gossiped about. So the conversations that you are having, and quite honestly, I wish you had more of them. I wish you had a committee of the whole a month ago and had the conversation you're going to have today. But I've always felt if you want to entertain in a discussion, have more discussion. So we're going to hear that, but we could wait for developers. That's been the traditional approach. When I got elected 5 years ago and I had a meeting with the village manager and I talked about economic development, I was basically told it's a waste of time and money. And then I was given a map of the downtown and a list of the businesses, and I was told I could go talk to those businesses. It was not quite the meeting I anticipated. But the attitude is developers will come and they'll present ideas to us and we'll react. Now, I happened to go talk to some of our businesses, and some of them said no one from the village had ever come talk to them in 35 years. So what we're talking about here is changing our approach to economic development, both our businesses, current and future. Now, we're not the only town that lost a grocery store. Buffalo Grove lost a grocery store, a Mariano's. Northbrook did. So why should someone come talk to us? What is different or better about us? And I think that's the kind of thing we need to talk about. We can wait for the developers as we had in the past. We can come with up incentives. We have savings. We've moved $2 million around here for this project or that. That's an approach. We can raise taxes. We could pursue a TIF district. I'm not afraid of a TIF because it's incremental. If nothing happens, there's really no cost. Now, if there's a lot of development, but the development is good. And the other possibility, and this was in the Hap Road report, which I, again, encourage people to read, is higher expertise. There are people that are really good at economic development, and they're proven to be good. But the one thing I would say is 900 people filled out the survey, the Village Hap Road survey, and many of them were young families, and the narratives are there. Everyone here can go look because the village still has them. And the narratives say, I'm a young family, I want more to do downtown. It's all there, they're asking for it. Now, they're not here tonight because they're home having dinner or they're spending time with their kids, but 85% of the people who filled out our survey said, please get us more for our downtown. Now, I'll be honest, 15% or so said, don't do a thing. Don't raise my taxes. Leave it the way it is. I love it. It's always been this way. So the discussion is yours to have, but I encourage you to have it because there is hunger for more things in our downtown. And again, I might have my list, everyone here has theirs, but doing nothing, to me, is regression. I will always be on the side of progress, reasonable progress, planned progress. So show this village, what is your vision? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? How much does it cost? And how do we pay for it? And I think people can get behind that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Beverly Smith, 772 Hap Road in Northfield, Chair of the Northfield Caucus. There have been an awful lot of meetings, and I know that it seems like there's one common thread, is the hunger for more information. And what the caucus came to a consensus on June 30th, and we sent it to the board, and I'm going to read it into the record. It's really questions about the plan and a way to find more time to answer these questions. So I'll go ahead and read the consensus. The Northfield Village Caucus reached a consensus in accordance with our bylaws at the June 30th meeting to make 5 requests of the village board regarding the tax increment financing proposal and procedures. The most important request is for the planned hearing scheduled for August 25th to be delayed for 60 days. It's the first week of school for many, a time when others may be squeezing in a vacation before Labor Day, and just days after our centennial celebration. In addition to August being less than ideal timing for a hearing, people need more time to even formulate the questions for this important hearing. The second request is for the village to conduct a survey of resident opinion on TIF using the emails on file to ensure the broadest reach. Barnaby explained the 900 responses that were received, very successful survey that could be replicated. Our current platform states that the village president and the village trustees acknowledge their duty to follow the clear majority opinion of village residents while respecting the rights of all. A survey would be an excellent way to meet that obligation. The third request is for a detailed rationale for designating the very large TIF district and justification for the inclusion of zones already subject to active development. Fourth, we're asking for projections of the economic impact of the TIF over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then finally, we request some details on the projected duties and compensation of our hired consultants, S.P. Friedman, if the ordinance is passed. And maybe some of these questions will be answered when each of you speaks to the TIF. But I felt I was under an obligation to read this. We've had so many meetings. We're supposed to meet 4 times a year. And I think we're not alone in scrambling to have extra meetings like the taxing bodies. And it is summertime, so I did feel obligated to read it into the record. I'll submit it to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Margaret Farney, 845 Hep Road. I just have a couple of things to say. I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Beverly just said, but it's the bottom line comes down to we need more time. Because I have come to these meetings, I am aware of what's going on. I know I've educated myself on what a TIF is, but there are so many of my friends in Northfield who have not got a clue of what's going on because the village is not spreading the word to all of the to all of the households in Northfield. Now, I have sent literature out to as many people as I can, but I should not have to be doing this. This is your job. You should be doing this. If you want a TIF, you need to be telling the residents what a TIF is and making sure that they all understand what's going on before you vote on it and decide to implement it. You need to hear our questions. And the other thing is, why can't you postpone this for another 60 days? What is the rush for doing this? And, we've gone from month to month to month to month, and now in August you're having your vote. And, it's like, why the heck do we have to do that? We don't have to do that. You could have the vote in September or October. There's no reason to have it on August 25th unless there's some underlying thing that we don't know about that you're not communicating to us. You need to be open with us. We'll trust you if you're open with us. If you're not open with us and you don't tell us everything, then we're not going to trust you, and that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Okay, I would like very much to move on to the next section of the agenda so that we can actually have the conversations that we said we were going to have this evening. So the next item on the agenda for the evening is the approval of the minutes from May 26th, 2026. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Next item of business is the continued discussion on the village TIF district. I want to just set the stage for what we're hoping to accomplish this evening with the 50 minutes or so that's left. So the first thing we want to do, oh, hang on, this is me, right? I'm sorry, I didn't even ask you. Okay. We're going to describe the problem. We're going to talk about what the options to be considered are, what is recommended, and what is the plan. So, when I drive around Northfield, I maybe take a little bit more time to look at the community, because I know we're all rushing to our next appointment, to our next drop our kids off at whatever is happening. But we captured some pictures of what Northfield looks like. And I just want to make sure that, you know, that while we're talking about this, that we're really in our heads talking about what some areas of Northfield look like. And I'm concerned that this is really what we want to have in our community. There are places that I don't think represent us as a community, Northfield as part of the neighborhoods surrounding us. And so I just wanted everybody to just for a moment consider some of these pictures and think about it. And these are the kinds of things that we're talking about when we talk about blight and we talk about places that haven't had the type of development that we believe Northfield deserves. So I took a moment to go back and you know, review the 2040 plan, which we've all talked about. And there's a couple of items here I just wanted to remind everyone, although some of you have already brought this up tonight, that the village works tirelessly to preserve the semi-rural character of the residential neighborhoods while increasing the vibrancy of the village center. And I think that is truly the mission of this group here. We'll hear more from everyone. But a couple of other things that I want to call out. When this plan was drafted and approved almost 6 years ago, it talked about the aging retail centers and commercial buildings being revitalized to provide for pedestrian-friendly mixed-use downtown with activated open spaces. So when this group of residents 6 years ago looked in their crystal ball, they saw the same things that we're talking about right now. And so I would ask you to consider that this is not just something that this board has randomly decided we're going to discuss. This is other residents in our community who sat down and spent a long period of time looking at what a comprehensive plan could be for our village. It talked about including Northfield Road, Frontage Road, east of Willow Road corridors, and having redevelopment that, again, elevates our village center. So we recently had, as many of you know, the Hap Road Committee took a look at what Hap Road could look like. And when you ask us what vision we see, this is from our resident architect, Francisco Gonzalez Pulido, who helped the Hap Road Committee reimagine what Northfield could look like. And I think we could all agree, although I don't want to speak for my fellow trustees, that this is an appealing look. And this was done by a world-famous architect who took the time to sit down and consider what else could happen in Northfield. Now, so I want us all to keep that in mind when we talk about what our vision is for the area, coupled with the vision that many of you have already seen related to the new library facility, existing in its current spot with a new home for the post office as well as the library, creating a really exciting gateway into our community off of Willow Road. And then going back to some of the other things that were in the 2040 plan, this is along Northfield Road, and this area was envisioned by the committee as an adult living area in close proximity to the North Shore Senior Center. So we're talking about more than one building. We're talking about problems that are dispersed throughout our central business district, and that there's been really disinvestment in our area. We have office vacancies. We all know that no one goes, well, not no one, but most people don't go to an office anymore. So we have situations where we have buildings that are vacant. And we've seen a continued lack of growth generally in this area, which leads to increased property taxes. And the village core, in our view, is dwindling. And without continued intervention, I think we'll see more of that. And again, we've heard neighbors talking about vibrancy, restaurants, local shops, walkability, and we really think it's time for Northfield to have their opportunity to enjoy the amenities that many of our surrounding communities have. You heard me say at the last meeting that hope is not a strategy, and I still believe that. Waiting for something to happen is essentially doing nothing. And action provides the necessary spark to make more things happen. So again, you'll hear us talk more about this tonight, incentivized reinvestment in the village, guiding desirable growth, which I think we have an opportunity to do if we have if we're offering TIF funds to developers. And we also want to help existing businesses and new businesses thrive in Northfield and continue to grow, and at the same time bringing the restaurants, the local shops, the cafes, the places that residents talk about that they would like to see in Northfield. So I'm going to ask Patrick now to go through some of the nuts and bolts of the financial situation here. But before I do that, there is one thing I do want to clear up from, I think, the last person that spoke, and we'll get back to this at the very end. But we are not voting on this on August 25th. The earliest that we could possibly vote on this by statute, if it continues down the path that it's going, is September 22nd. And when you ask whether we're going to answer questions, that is the purpose of the public hearing. We will answer questions. As our school board members talked about more than once, it's complicated. It's hard to come up with the financial reasoning, and we want to make sure that we are answering your questions as fully as we possibly can. So just a reminder, August 25th is the public hearing. The earliest that there would be a vote among this board is September 22nd. This board can discuss the timing at any point, and we can make any further decisions from there. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Patrick to give you some background on why we think we're here at this moment in time.
Thank you. A big part of the reason that we're looking at this is we're starting to get requests, and we have these visions that we would like to be able to make happen. And residents often ask, well, why is it so important, or how is it expensive? So we put together some things here that these are asks or needs just within the proposed TIF district. The former Mariano's, the owner is not able to find a tenant for that entire site. They've been working for over a year on this. They had early notice from Mariano's that they were going to not renew the lease, and they haven't been able to close the deal. There are a number of reasons for that. It has a lot to do with preparing the site and trying to get it ready for a new tenant. They have told us, most recently as today, that they are close, and they have 2 potential deals formed for the building itself. But it's going to require what they call demising the building, basically splitting it in 2. So it's like a duplex, if you will, in a home. Their own utilities, own everything. And they're saying to make this happen and to close these deals, they need significant resources from the village financially to make that happen. The number is forthcoming, but significant enough that I'm in the process now of trying to engage consultants that can do something called a gap analysis to indicate the owner says we need X dollars. The village is going to look at that and say, is that reasonable? It'll go through a group internally, and then a recommendation come to the village board to see if that can be funded. The library is another project we mentioned. There's approximately $2 million worth of just site work to happen in that facility to get it ready for construction. Hap Road, over $1.5 million have been spent designing Hap Road, and we're going backward a little bit in that, starting a redesign to come up with new concepts to look at. The village will have to fund those concepts 100%, and then we are out of line, if you will. We've lost our place in line for a federal grant to help pay for the construction that was expected to be about $6 million. And finally, just in the TIF district, proposed district alone, we've got about $7.5 million worth of village infrastructure work. Again, this is just within the proposed boundaries of the TIF, but unfortunately, there's more. Throughout the village, our water mains are aging. They've been in the ground for over 70 years. Depending on the conditions of the soil, you're starting to exceed the life of those mains. We just had a recent apartment building, condominium building not far away from Village Hall, had a failure underneath the ground and it flooded their garage. So there's aging mains. We have areas of town that are asking for help with stormwater because they're getting flooding during the year. And as we've looked at those areas, there is insufficient stormwater piping in those areas. We've got a $1.4 million fire engine we just needed to order. Police pension's up $296,000. Our liability, our unfunded part of the police pension is over $16 million. Our non-police pension, which we call the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, IMRF, is over a $3 million liability. The grocery store being out, we've lost $350 a year in tax revenue in the grocery store category. And then on top of all that, the state is continuing to pressure local villages as they have their financial distress in that they're not doing as much revenue sharing as they've done in the past. LGF, Local Government Distributive Fund, Personal Property Replacement Tax. Every year, our consortium of communities are trying to argue with Springfield about protecting those revenue sources because we need help in those areas. And combine that with a village core underperforming, it starts to have a compounding effect. So what can the village do about that? How can we come up with revenue sources to be able to address these growing needs? Well, one of the most obvious is property taxes. And the village's revenue sources are almost split a third, a third, a third between property taxes, other taxes, fees, permits, and what we call miscellaneous. The good news is property taxes are generally what we call an inelastic revenue source. They're pretty much guaranteed to be 98, 99% paid, while sometimes the county's a little bit late, but we always get those funds because they're guaranteed through property taxes. The taxes, fees, permits are what we call elastic revenue sources. Those can vary year to year depending on how well the economy is doing. Again, that's about a third of our revenue source. And the other third is miscellaneous categories. It can be grants, other things that are also elastic revenue sources. And another piece not to forget is our general fund operates, but there's also something called the water fund. It's an enterprise fund, where that goal is for the water fund to be able to stand on its own, on its revenue and expenditures, to make sure it's surviving as an entity. And most of the time, it needs help from us, the general fund, to make things happen, but I've been asked, so what's the size of this problem? Well, we've got over 177,000 feet of water main. It's about 12 miles. The reason I put that in the feet category is because last year we bid out a project. So I have fresh data on a per lineal foot about how much water main costs. So I took 177 feet, multiplied that by the cost of the bidding, both the low bid that we awarded and the high bid. And that puts us in about $105 million to $129 million of future needs to replace water mains. To give you context, the water fund earns enough money through the rate charged to residents to be able to do about a $2 million project every other year, every 3 years. I won't bore you with taking every other year at $2 million and dividing it by $105 million, but it's going to take a lot of time at our current rates. Additionally, our water revenues are not that far out of line with our neighbors. We're slightly higher, so there's not a lot of room for changes in those rate structures. Those are our primary revenue sources, and I'll turn it back to President Mendrick as we start to then talk in about alternate revenue sources for consideration.
So I thought, from a trustee's perspective, we'd break this down into maybe more manageable chunks where we could talk about expenses, sources of revenue, expenses, and then get into a broader discussion about TIF. So I'd like to open it up to the 6 of you here for questions, concerns, thoughts on where we stand right now in terms of our expenses and revenue projections. Charlie, I wonder if you'd like to start. You've been very vocal in opposition to this, and I appreciate that, and I don't feel like you've necessarily had a chance to give us your thoughts on what we might do instead. So why don't you lead us off?
I'd like to defer, please. I'm still making notes.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in? Concerns, anything you want to call out?
Yeah, no, I think thank you, Patrick, for putting this together. I think it's important for us to lay out sort of those liabilities that we know have been there. We've been on the board 7 years, and every year the police pension comes back and they say, guess what, your unfunded liabilities, you put it at 16.3 million, but it grows every single year. And soon enough, it's going to be $3 million a year. That's money we don't have today. It's a concern. There's also the Tier 2 employees that we haven't even talked about, where the state had an unfunded mandate that say that the Tier 2 police officers have to get back up to Tier 1 level retirement levels. We don't even know the cost of that, do we? Yeah, we don't have a cost on that.
I would also add that we, as a board, and you guys who've been here longer, Charlie, Tom, Todd, have, we've always, where we could, added extra dollars to that pension payment over time. We have not just paid the minimum that we can. When we've seen
In good years, we have, yes. In good years, we've added additional money when we can. But we also have to keep our reserves in tow, too.
Yep.
So it's a balancing act. And
Right.
so when you look at that, and I think you can speak to like the fire equipment and the increase in costs that we're seeing associated with it. These are ongoing liabilities that aren't going to go away.
Well, and I think there's another piece, and I just was trying to recollect. Do you remember what year it was, or does anybody remember what year it was? I'm sorry, what year it was when the village gave a significant rebate back to the residents for having too much money and felt the need to give that money back? And hindsight's always 2020, but you know, that's one of the things there is the fact that one of our big problems is infrastructure. And we've seen it, we've heard it, and doing that, and what Barnaby said was the whole economic development piece, and I'm just kind of putting all these pieces together, but as Trustee Fowler said, you know, looking at just core services, specifically like our fire and EMS, an ambulance roughly 20 years ago cost $200,000. Today it's just under $500,000. Same with the fire engine, was $500,000 back then, and like we said in the presentation, we just spent just shy of $1.4 million. So as fiscally responsible as we are being, the costs are highly exceeding our ability to continue to provide these great things without looking at other alternate sources for income.
I got a question. Did the Tier 2 pass yet, though? I thought that hasn't passed the state, that they have to bring the Tier 2 people up to Tier 1. Does that pass the legislation yet? Because I don't think it
I thought
has.
it had, maybe it hadn't, but I know that
There's
that
talk
is
about it, but I don't think
there's
it
a
has.
drive toward it.
Yeah. I think it's going to keep coming back. So,
I'd like to turn over to the water side. I mean, I think I'm good at math, but 129 divided by 2 is 65 years? And that's assuming there's no cost changes at all?
Today's numbers.
In today's numbers, right, which is going to be irrelevant in about 6 months, right? Because that seems how these projects are going right now. So that's one side of it. We are woefully short on covering that side of the world. What's our timeline on having to do a lot of these projects? I mean, we did a whole, what was it, 3 months ago? We talked about how bad water project or infrastructure was across the village. So we're at 80% bad, 75? I mean, like, what's our timeline? How soon do we got to get this? Because I don't think we have 65 years to put all new pipes in. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like, just a feeling I have between lead mediation we have to do, all these other things we have, and our budget's increased. Todd, you made this comment, Trustee Fowler made this comment during the budget meetings. We went from 10 million to 16 million in 6 years? 7 years? So our future budget to cover water alone might be 30 if we have to do this in the immediate. which means our property taxes are all going up. I mean, the money's not there, I guess is where I'm going with all this. But Patrick, I'll let you fire in.
No, I agree with you. Right now, I don't have an answer on how we can fund that. As you know, during the budget hearings and our 10-year capital planning, I forwarded the idea of let's try to plan a project every other year, because that's where we're able to get things done. I can design it one year and build it the next year. But even at that, it has been a number of years since you've done any water main projects at all. So the most recent one is on West Frontage, and then we're planning for South Hap Road and Harding coming spring of next year, if bidding works well on that project.
And I think the downside of water infrastructure for homeowners or anybody involved in that side of it, it's kind of like an HVAC system. It's like something you have to do and you don't really get to see it, right? Or like pick your favorite thing in a house. And that's kind of the downside of this. It's something we have to do. We have to for our residents, because otherwise we just had a large water main break on Wednesday, whatever that was. I think we're going to see that more frequently if we don't start repairing our systems, right? Which actually costs us more money in the long run as well, because then we have to bring in emergency crews, clean everything up, get the ditches dug correctly, all the things you have to do to fix a water main at the last minute. And we live in a northern climate where we have freezing and heaving and all the things that go into it. So I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around how we get to paying for some of this in our current environment.
I always try to have answers for you, but on this one, I'm not there yet.
We do put monies away every year, though, for vehicle replacement and a lot of the other things, correct?
Yeah, it's actually, Northfield has done a better job than many communities that I'm aware of setting aside funds into a fund, the capital fund, to try to pay for these things as they come up. The problem is you look at like the fire engine, the costs, the money that we depreciate and set aside is based on the purchase price of the old equipment, not on today's value. So while we are setting money aside, the economy is growing so fast and things are getting so expensive, it's not enough to keep pace with what the needs are.
And the motor fuel tax that we get is $400 and something thousand that we're getting this year to do some of the road repairs, motor fuel tax share that we get, correct?
It's not the tax share, we budgeted a $420,000 project. Part of that will be on your agenda for the village board meeting to be able to do just asphalt replacement and repair work.
Right, so that's money though that we also get for that. It's not that we have to come up with the 420. 420 is our share of the motor fuel tax from the government, correct?
That 420 is money given to local communities through the motor fuel tax fund, yes.
Correct. Anybody else? We can, Todd or Andrew, anything?
I think the other thing, and we'll get into this, but we've already lost roughly $350,000 in annual sales tax from Mariano's. I know you can't give numbers, but when I asked you, Patrick, Walgreens' sales tax revenue has actually gone backwards at a period when inflation has been running hot. So they're actually selling less, correct?
I'm trying to be careful about what information we share. As I look at the drug category of sales tax, we're seeing signs that are concerning. It's probably the safest thing I can do without violating any of our requirements.
Okay, it's not strong.
No, I'm concerned.
Thank you.
But didn't we recently, in your report a couple months ago, exceed without the Marianos by, what was it, 180 or 280,000, what our anticipated income and tax revenue was? And that we were putting $200,000 towards the IMRF and then 80,000 went back in the budget?
At the end of the fiscal year, ending April 30th, we had a surplus, and the board agreed to direct those surpluses to the pension funds.
But that was above what we expected, even the loss of Mariano's.
We had budgeted for a reduction of revenue, and we had a single taxpayer do much better than normal that allowed us to be able to put that likely one-time revenue into paying down some of our unfunded liabilities, yes.
I mean, that was an extreme outlier from, right, compared to past.
Year over year.
Yeah, well, year over year, that was.
And
extreme
unexpected,
outlier.
yes.
Yeah, we can't expect that every year by any means, I don't think.
Okay, so No other comments here. We're going to
I
move.
have another one if you're
Okay,
ready.
go ahead.
So anyways, I have a prepared statement. On August 22nd, the Village of Northfield will be celebrating its 100-year anniversary with a celebration at Clarkson Park. This event will bring together our entire community. The people who were the early settlers of Northfield worked very hard to build this community. While it's not perfect, it has so many outstanding things to offer. Great schools, fantastic park district, open space. It's surrounded by Cook County Forest Preserve District, access to the highway, close access to Lake Michigan, and especially the businesses and more. I've been proud to call this my home for my entire life of 67 years now and counting. Working on the centennial has brought back so many great memories of growing up here, raising a family, and serving my community in multiple capacities. The current landscape of Northfield did not happen overnight. Many positive changes have been made in my lifetime, and maybe a few not so good. The TIF process was introduced to the public on April 28th at the Committee of the Whole meeting. It is now July 21st. That is less than 3 months. So when people talk about it's been out there for a while, that's simply not true. We've heard from countless residents, business owners, and taxing bodies why the TIF is not necessary or a good idea and why people oppose it. 30 years ago, TIF was suggested for an area which included the property where Metamorphosis is to the salon to Stormy's, which was formerly Sewell's. It was adamantly opposed and rejected by the community. They were going to use the eminent domain feature of TIF to tear down these buildings and build a hotel, among other things. We recently changed the zoning on Central Avenue corridor, north of Willow Road, to encourage development, which it has. We have heard from countless experts at 3 different school board meetings about TIF and the recent JRB meeting about the negative impacts of TIFs and the alternative options instead of a TIF. 3 to 5 months is way shorter to gather and digest and make such an important decision like this that will impact this community for the next 23 years. This clearly puts a negative financial burden on all local taxing bodies. I think the process is moving way too quickly. The summer is a terrible time to expect the residents to engage in this process. It is not necessary. This puts our business owners who don't own their buildings at risk. It invites potential developers who don't care about the current business of the character of Northfield to come in and potentially develop a piece of property, make their money, and never give a second thought. These are some of the many reasons why I oppose TIF, and there are more. You asked me to speak first. I just wanted to decide whether or not I was going to read this tonight or others. And I've listened to the residents. I've gone through the community. I go to all these different meetings, and I hear the same thing. It's not so much to be 100% against the TIF. I think when you look at the 144 buildings, I believe, that are included in the TIF area and the pictures you took, there's plenty of other pictures that show a great property and great properties in Northfield. Also, I think we've been remiss, and no fault in general, I know we've been short-staffed, but I think we've been remiss when you show some of those pictures in enforcing the property maintenance code. We have a property maintenance code. We need to look at the property maintenance code, and when there's properties like whatever that dumping was in that one picture, we should make whoever dumped that there clean it up, or if we need to, clean it up ourselves just to get it out of there so it doesn't look so horrible. But again, the property maintenance code is there for a reason, whether it's painting, whether it's people fixing different things, cutting their grass, all these different issues. I think as a board and as a village, we need to look at that, just like what Barnaby brought up about having some of the public works people once a week or so go down Hap Road and pick up the trash. Well, that same thing should be happening here, or we should get on these property owners or these people to make sure they clean up their property. So for that reason and many more is part of the reason I'm against it. I'm also very concerned about the properties and the businesses who don't own their business, that somebody can come in. And I know Sean Hofer's expressed that he was approached by some developers that basically want to buy his property or buy that property. And if you don't own your building, you have no control. And we could lose a lot of great businesses with this, and that's one of my other concerns. So thank you for your time.
So there was a TIF proposed 30 years ago?
Yes, and the property went from, it used to be the Fix-It Shop where Pam's building is.
Yeah.
There was the Barnes Bootery, which is then became the pub, and then that row there. So they wanted to knock it down, and they wanted to put a hotel in.
I just have a quick, that was 30 years ago, right?
And they wanted to use eminent domain.
And there's still 2 vacant lots right there, 30 years later. So, I mean, at like some point.
They're not vacant. Ed, they're not vacant.
Hope is
They've-
not-
They've transitioned.
Right behind the
this
building
time.
here, there's 2 vacant lots. Like, and that would have been part of that TIF district, from what you just said. So like, at some point, like,
What vacant lots are you talking about?
where the Byline Bank owns property, and then the one between Pam's building and the Byline Bank. Those are 2, it's grass, last I checked, which means there's not a building on it.
Right, but that's not in this area that I'm talking about where they did TIF. And again, if
So the
somebody
TIF was
owns-
only the 3 buildings and not the vacant lots right
No,
next to the buildings.
exactly. The TIF went straight back. And the other thing is,
Well, it's 30
if
years
an
ago.
owner owns a piece of property and decides they're not going to develop it, I don't think you can make them or tell them that you must
I mean,
develop it.
hope is not a strategy, right? Like,
It's not a strategy.
we can't hope that 30 years from now, somebody comes in and, like, I'm on the younger end of the spectrum here on the board, no offense to my fellow trustees, but like,
None taken.
yeah, right. I don't want 30 years from now, there's still a vacant lot over here. And in other spots, like, at some point, like, we've got to do something. I mean, like, at some point, we got to look at alternative options and how to move forward, right? And I love that rezoning's been, you brought up rezoning again. You voted against rezoning, first of all, you didn't want to have rezoning happen, so, but now we're championing it, I guess. But
You
at the
can't
same,
change your mind. I didn't vote against the rezoning. It's not true.
June of 2025, you did, it was a 5-to-1 vote in favor. One person opposed rezoning, but I know you champion it now, but like, at the end of the day, we tried to make changes, get things going, and so much development, so much development, so much development. It's 4 of the properties out of 144 have development. 4 out of 144.
And that just started.
Pretty small percentage. And the 4 properties, 3 of which have not pulled permits yet or put a hole in the ground, which means they are not actually in development until they start being in development. 1 is in development, which is the 12-unit condo building. I wouldn't say that's explosive development as people are talking about. Nothing south of Willow. That's the only area, and that area, it's all residential, which is what we rezoned the area to, was to include residential. So I don't know, I'm just getting very frustrated in hearing this whole, the rezoning's really working, it's really taking off. It's 4 out of 144 properties. Like, we're not, like, that is a small percentage. And my fear is that we're gonna have vacant buildings and vacant lots. I grew up in a town where we gave up on our downtown, my hometown did, and it's still dead 40 years later.
I'm not looking
And
to
I'm
give up.
terrified of that happening here.
Can I just make a quick comment? Because I think most of the opposition to TIF is because everybody doesn't have the information they want. It's moving too fast. I don't care. I'm married to an educator. School districts are always going to oppose TIF. It does not matter. And the school districts brought in their expert who opposes TIF. The village wants to do a TIF. We're going to bring an expert in, and they are, and I can speak like this because she's retired, thank you, they're taking our point of view. It's something that we want to do. We as a board haven't even discussed when our final public hearing is going to be.
Well, we have, well, the final, right.
Right, the
Okay.
final.
Mhm.
We haven't discussed and agreed completely upon the parameters of it. Like, the no TIF that everybody has is based on an assumption. And it's not based on fact, and it's not based on a conversation that the board has had.
But we're having it now, so
I understand that, but I'm listening to it's so frustrating, because we're working hard to try and improve our village. And I sitting here and watching the faces, I want everybody to know as we continue on, it's not done. Decisions haven't been made. Nothing's been set in stone. And we support our existing businesses, period.
Okay, so, go ahead.
No,
Wait.
where are you going? Where are you headed?
I'm moving on with the 20
don't
more
think
slides
Matt's
we
had a
have to
chance
cover.
to comment
Okay,
at all.
fair enough.
Okay, Matt?
I haven't. I just had a question about the agenda. So I thought I understood that this was broken up into different
It
sections.
is. We have 2 more to get to.
So just so I can organize this in my head, what are the other 2 topics? Just 'cause
Okay.
You don't
So
have
the
to just-
next section, we're going to discuss some of the alternative revenue sources that have been discussed by school boards and others in the community. That's the next section. Then we're going to stop and discuss that. Then the section beyond that is a more detailed discussion about TIF. Did I get that screwed up? I got that, right? Okay. So that's where we're going to go. So let's move on then, Patrick. And I do want to say, for those of you who, say, what aren't you telling us? What are you hiding? All of those questions. I mean, this really is our top opportunity to talk amongst ourselves about all of the things that we're facing as a village. We live this day to day. We know that residents don't. You're not deep in the budget the way we are looking at these expenditures. We're talking about them every month. So I'm hopeful that you will see this as our opportunity to be transparent with you about the things that are coming down the pipeline for us. So, Patrick, let's move on to the other suggested.
Sure. So the next series of slides are things that we've talked a little bit about before, but we've heard a number of times people saying, have you looked at all the other options? So I thought this was a good opportunity to both go back through them with the board and see if we have any additional questions. So some of these things were brought up in the comprehensive plan, the Vision Plan 2040. First one is a special service area. A special service area is an additional property tax levied on a defined area to support a specific service. It is an overlay, if you will, of property tax. It can generate a long-term revenue stream. However, it's an additional burden on an area. So if you're trying to put an SSA into an area that's already struggling, you've weighed them down with further property taxes. The revenue potential to the village is moderate. It's the potentially good long-term revenue stream, so long as you have properties within that SSA area that are continuing to be valued high and supplying property tax revenue. The next one is a property tax rebate. They kind of are a little similar here in that one option is for the village to enter into agreements with owners to say, we're going to rebate a portion of your property tax. That's a property tax rebate. The trick is the revenue source to the village to be able to help with revenue or with infrastructure and other things is zero, because the money goes back to the payer of the property taxes. And the village portion, we can only refund our portion. We can't refund anybody else's. Our portion of the property tax is 12.5%, depending on the year and how things change. So that option is one to be able to help spur development and get our infrastructure going and build new sidewalks and streetscape, et cetera, is not one that helps the village. Another one you'll hear about is a business development district. In some ways, it functions a little bit like a TIF district, and then it's potentially there for 23 years, and there's set of criteria. It's establishing a new 1% tax on sales within that area. It can also open access to federal grants because you've designated this as a business development area. Not trying to make a political statement, but right now, Illinois, you're not going to be likely to get many federal grants coming our way. That may change in the future, but of more concern for the business development district is if you don't have robust retail sales, you're not seeing much because it's only 1% of sales. So great for a shopping mall area or an area where you need that, you've got a lot of retail, but an area where you've got mixes of offices and other areas like we do, not as strong. So that's why you see revenue potential small, that's that tie to retail sales. Similarly, sales tax rebate. The village can enter into sales tax rebates or sharing agreements with vendors. The village has a few with a few key revenue generators in town to be able to keep them in the village and keep that revenue stream coming to us. A sales tax rebate is rebating all or a portion, or you set a cap and say if you grow, we're going to refund X percent above the base set. To us, again, the revenue source is zero because that money is going back to the business that submitted the sales tax to you. It's just a money in, money back out. And again, no infrastructure because we don't have any revenue source from that. At the recent Joint Review Board meeting, the consultant for the schools said we're missing two great opportunities of potential revenue sources, Cook County's 6B and 7B programs. So I did a little research on these to prepare for this meeting. The 6B program is for the expansion of industrial uses. And the goal you see here is pulled directly from Cook County's description of what that program is for. It provides temporary property tax reductions that are phased out over a period of 10, 15, 20 years. If I remember the numbers correctly, commercial or the industrial property starts at a 25% property tax. In the first 10 years, it's reduced to 10%, and then 15, and then 20, building that back up. More industry in Northfield is not part of the comprehensive plan, not something that I think the village is trying to do, so 6B probably is not a good use. Cook County 7B is similar in many of its functions, but it's for commercial uses. Again, but that is limited to commercial uses that are there. If it's housing, if it's other things, you may not be eligible for that funding. And so the vision in the comp plan to add multifamily or mixed retail bottom floor, residential above, would most likely not be eligible for 7B because it's not primarily commercial purposes. Again, revenue potential is zero for the village in both of these options because it's money going back to the property owner. So those options are things that you've talked about and decided that they're not best for taxpayers. There are new taxes or just not helping you achieve your goals. So another issue raised by the school districts is, hey, you're a home rule community, raise the property taxes. You have the ability to do that, raise property taxes for all Northfielders to achieve your goals. When we look at what our tax rate is compared to our neighbors, we're in the ballpark of what our neighboring communities are doing. There are some, Glenview has a lower tax rate. If we could find a way to get apt to move into the former Mariano site, my information's at least 10 years old, but there was a point where they were doing $1 million a day in sales. It would be a beautiful thing for us. But we don't have that. So our property taxes are generally in line with our neighbors. Part of the reason the board in the past has talked about keeping our property taxes low is because it keeps the pressure off the property taxes and allows the other taxing bodies who have less revenue options than us to be able to use those resources. The school districts recently had a referendum passed. The Park District recently got a referendum passed. I'd like to think that has something to do with the village being able to keep its share of the property taxes low and reasonable. When you raise the property taxes, that is what we call an imported tax. Your residents pay 100% of that fee. Exported taxes are things that you can put on like a sales tax, where people coming into town, the Mariano's property was a great one. There are people coming in from Wilmette, Kenilworth, Winnetka, shopping at the store, paying sales tax. That revenue came to us as a way to help pay for things, but it was paid by our neighboring towns in a good part. So where we can, we try to lean more on those exported revenue sources to keep the pressure on our residents low. So raising property taxes is counter to what instruction the board has been giving in the past of trying to keep that pressure off our residents. The revenue potential is high. You are a home rule community. You could raise property taxes by 1 billion% if you wanted to. But if I understand this, and I haven't read the ordinances, when the village achieved home rule status, there was a promise or something in the ordinance stating that you would stick to the property tax cap, PTEL. And that is why it's been done, that if the tax cap's 3%, the village does not levy more than 3% to keep in line with that promise to the residents. So those are all the potential major other revenue sources that have been looked at, discussed, and it really led us to what I feel is and it'll be up to the board to determine, is the most fiscally responsible option, and that is a TIF district. It is an exported tax in a sense. It's not a new tax. It's taking property taxes that a property owner would pay and redirecting those funds to the village to be able to reinvest in the district. It can fund new growth. It can support existing needs and infrastructure. It's flexible in its uses for the village to be able to help you achieve many of the goals that you've outlined in the vision plan and that you've expressed to me over the years as we're working on budgets. There have been a few questions about concern that the board will have this pot of money and that vendors or developers will be able to come in and they're automatically eligible to receive it. That's not how it works. A TIF district is a fund, much like the water fund that I talked about earlier, that's like an enterprise fund. This is a special fund where it is separated from the other village resources. And we track those expenditures. But to use those funds to pay for a development, the board has to enter into a redevelopment agreement, a plan that's done in a public meeting. So the typical way to manage this is a developer would submit an application and showing, hey, here's a gap. I'd like to be able to make this happen, but there's a funding gap. Here's my data. And we would look at it internally, or we bring a consultant in to evaluate their numbers. A group would make a recommendation to the village board if we think developer X should have X dollars because this is a wonderful use. That's how TIF expenditures from the fund generally happen. The other way is if we created a facade improvement grant. So you can come up with grants, and there would be a separate application process for that. So if somebody wanted to put up new signage, awnings, and a new facade on their building, they could apply for a grant through a much easier process than the developer process. And the board also would approve those expenditures. It's something that you have a lot that you'd like to do. We have a lot of financial pressures in other areas. And as I look at all the options of doing this line of work for a number of decades, I see it as kind of the only option available on the table without making significant impact to the residents by levying a direct property tax upon them. And TIFs are not uncommon. Today, Northfielders, any property taxpayer in Cook County is supporting over 400 TIF districts. I'm guessing most of you did not know that that's on your property tax bill. It's not a separate line item, but City of Chicago has over 100. The remaining suburbs have over 300 TIF districts in place, functioning well. The school districts throughout Cook County are not failing. There are a lot of TIF districts. But what's the impact to us? Well, for our residents, it's the smallest impact of all the options we've looked at that aren't direct rebates of property taxes or sales taxes. To kind of put some context to it, we've run some numbers, and these are, if we had growth in town of about $5 million within the TIF district, the homeowner of a $500,000 home would see about a $38 annual increase in their property taxes. So $5 million worth of growth in the TIF district would be about $38. That's why when we look at this and we say that the impact to property taxpayers of Northfield is small, it's because we become the 401st TIF district if you do that. And all of Cook County, in a sense, to some degree, is helping pay for the investments you have in town. And it may be our turn to be, I hate to use the phrase take advantage of, but using what resources are available to be able to make the things you want to have happen.
Okay. This is the next stopping point. I'll open it up to all of you to add comments, ask questions on anything. If you need to go back to a slide, happy to do that.
I'll just reiterate from our last meeting, because unfortunately I think some people had walked out at that time, so I just want to go over a couple things. First off, I'm Andrew Yedis, and for transparency, I wanted to disclose again that I'm an employee of New Trier. So is my wife. My boys have gone to Sunset Ridge. Obviously, New Trier is one of the taxing bodies affected by this proposal. In August, I will have taught special ed at New Trier for 20 years. and I don't participate in Nutrier's decision-making regarding this matter, and I'm approaching this issue solely in my capacity as a trustee. I've consulted with our village attorney regarding my participation and have chosen to stay in so I could ask questions. I care about protecting the interests of the Northfield residents while taking seriously the concerns of the schools. I recognize the school districts have legitimate concerns about protecting future revenue streams, and I also recognize the village's responsibility to evaluate opportunities for responsible economic development. My goal is to ensure that we have the facts and that any action includes appropriate protections for all taxing bodies. I want the village to make a decision that's financially responsible and does not unintentionally harm the institutions that serve Northfield. So some of my questions when it comes to the financial impact, just making sure it's understood. I think we've done a good job of explaining the potential impact for all the taxing bodies, including Nutrier, Avoca, and Sunset Ridge, and I hope that we can work with those districts to get kind of specific numbers so we can work with something tangible. We've talked about property tax that could be diverted in the TIF that would otherwise go to schools, like what specific amount, and what assumptions are we using for future growth, and what happens if the projected development doesn't occur. Just some things I think we can tease out when we go to that next level. And I'm just making sure that there's protections in this, that there's regular reporting, meaningful review process, clear limits on spending, an opportunity to get out if it's not working, and then increased transparency. And also I want to encourage collaboration with the schools and the village. Joint meetings between the two, shared financial presentations, open communication before decisions are made, and I want to acknowledge that both sides have legitimate responsibilities for the children, for the future, and for the impact on our community. I think there's a lot of different ways that we can consider a compromise forward, but I'd rather work together than create arbitrary lines that don't exist, because I think at the core of this, we're in this for economic development, the long term of Northfield, and I think if we can work together on something, we can come up with a solution.
Okay, I want to just stop for 1 minute here because we're past the 7 o'clock hour, and I'm perfectly happy to continue this committee of the whole meeting for a little bit longer so we can get through this presentation, and then we'll get to the board meeting after that. So, okay. Andrew, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on this last section we've been through?
I do have a couple, sorry, Matt. I do have a couple on the business side of the world. So how do our business tax rates compare to other villages at the current time? Are we higher than other villages? Are we lower than other villages? Kind of the same? Where are we currently?
If I understand correctly, are you asking about our sales tax?
No, like from a property tax rate standpoint.
I think we're very similar to others, especially when I look at this proposed TIF district. Central is kind of a dividing line between school districts, park districts, and townships. And as we look at both of those areas, they're very similar in tax rate. Avoca is slightly higher, but not to an appreciable level.
And I ask because if you go back the couple slides, every option was basically taxing the businesses. So why would we make our businesses less competitive than other villages when we're trying to bring businesses into our district? I mean, I don't have Steve's job on economic development and some of those other things, but I think I can figure out that if we make a less competitive environment, we'll have less businesses come to our district. I don't know if anybody disagrees with me on that, but that just seems like kind of 101, capitalism 101, right? So that's one side of it. But then the other one, if we do sales tax, we've yet again made our businesses less competitive compared to other places, because if you have a product and you need to sell it, you need to sell it for 1% more than everywhere else. It is now less, I mean, ask every small hardware store how it's gone against the big boxers, like the Lowe's and Home Depots and all them. So I just, personally, I guess I'm saying on it, I'm trying to help spur economic development. I don't think taxing our businesses is going to spur economic development. I think it will actually have the opposite effect on our businesses.
Yeah, that's definitely one I worry about, because I think at least where I know that a store has a bag tax or a bag fee, I bring my own bag or I shop elsewhere, and I would hate to see our businesses saddled with a 1% tax, because people, they're discerning. They look at their receipts, and if they're paying 1% more for their cup of coffee in Northfield than they are somewhere else, I don't want anyone to even have to make that decision. I don't want that to be an option for us. And, you know, I will go back to the idea of raising property taxes, and I had the honor of, you know, co-chairing the Home Rule Committee initiative many years ago. Kathy Estabrook served on that committee with me. And we did include an option to the village board that they would never, that they pledged to never raise taxes above the CPI. And every board has done that. And I'm not interested in being the first one that doesn't. So that's, in my view, off the table for us, and doesn't help any of us. So, you know, I just wanted to say that I'm totally against raising the property taxes, as we committed not to do many, many years ago.
And I was going to say, absolutely 100% agree on trying to do everything we can not raise taxes. But the other part, trying to not like be smart about how I say all this, but the 6B thought process, I don't know how many folks in here would rather have a small manufacturer come into the Mariano's property than a grocery store. Like, frankly, I can't believe that was put up as an option, that we could use 6B.
Yeah.
When like our biggest problem is trying to get a grocery store. Why would we, it seems disingenuous to me. Like, it's not trying to actually solve the problem. Instead, it's just trying to find a path that seems the best for the folks in the room at that time. But that's just me commenting on that.
Well,
I
this
found
is,
that
again, is our opportunity to share how we feel about some of these suggestions. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yep.
It's probably a dumb question, but property values seem really high around town. Like, so what happens if property values just generally decline across the board? Like, I mean, it's really a question, I think, for all the taxing bodies to think about. I mean, we're all fighting about this pie. What if the pie just shrinks across the board? I mean, besides the TIF, but like also, obviously, we're talking about TIF, so with the TIF.
Sure. So I've got actually two parts to your answer. The first one is a really real-world example. The owners of the Mariano's property are paying in the ballpark of $700,000 a year in property tax. Because that site has been vacant for a tax year, they are going to appeal their property tax valuation and say, this is a vacant parcel, and right now it cannot be utilized, so take our property taxes down. And I'm going to make up a number here because I have no idea what the tax appeals board will say, but let's say it goes from $700,000 to $200,000. $500,000 of previously paid property taxes get dispersed among all other residents. Everybody else has got to pick up for that $500,000 that isn't coming from Mariano's anymore. So that's why this dwindling we've been talking about of the village core is a problem. Much like the 400 TIF districts, you don't actually see it on your property taxes specifically, but the fact that the core is not performing as well as the rest of the town has a lower EAV in that area, and everybody pays more because it's not healthy. So the second part of the answer is property taxes are going, or the values are going up, EAVs are going up. If everybody's EAV goes up at the same rate, you don't pay any more taxes. Because the taxing bodies are still levying whatever dollar it is, you're still paying the same share percentage as you were before because everybody's went up. The problem is when you've got an area that goes down or a big business or home that goes down, the rest of us pay for that lack of performance. If that, it's super complicated. I try not to give you too much detail, but that's the best answer I've got for you.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, like, for all the taxing bodies, if the residential prices go down, we're all sort of assuming that we have this level of taxing that we're receiving, and if it was to go down sharply, it would affect just everybody, and it's just sort of a rhetorical question, I think, for all the taxing bodies to think about, that if the value goes down, I mean, forget about the TIF. I mean, it's just something, we're all fighting about this pie, but the pie may just shrink across the board. It's just, like I said, a rhetorical thought.
And to build off that quick, 4 out of the last 5 years, we were below CPI in EAV. in the TIF district, right? So with 2 of those years being negative, which 2021, a little bit of an outlier, post-COVID, et cetera, right? But like, in reality, we've been below CPI for the last 5 years. So does it turn into 9 out of 10 and then we decide it's bad? I mean, at what point does it become bad enough, right? I mean, that's part of, we got to spur economic development in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I think with the triennial reassessment, though, we have no clue on what's going to happen. I'm sure nobody's tax bill is going to go down. And I think whenever that comes out, February, March, April, whenever we see that in that first tax bill, the second, you're going to see everyone's taxes go up, which means the village is going to see increased revenue because all our taxes are going to go up across the board.
But I think that's the misnomer, Trustee Orth. People assume that higher EAVs mean higher taxes. That is incorrect. Taxing bodies don't get more than they levy. So just because property values went up doesn't mean that suddenly the county says, ooh, let me give you an extra $500,000. It's not the way it works. Much to Trustee Gallen's question, if the EAV through the triennial reassessment goes up for everybody, you're still paying the same percentage compared to your neighbor because the taxing body still needed X dollars. It's only the taxing bodies asking for more that causes your property taxes to go up. Or your home gets assessed at a different level than somebody else. Because then you're paying a different percentage than you were before.
But it still means your property taxes are going to go up. You're going to be paying more. You can't tell me that no
Based on the triennial reassessment, no. Not if everybody moves up at the same rate.
But if you look at the numbers, and I've gone through this with the assessor's office, you're going to be paying more. Wait to see, wait till spring, you'll be able to say yeah or nay.
Well, 2 referendums got passed in the village this year, so yes, your taxes are going up.
For those, yeah. No, because I'm on the east.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that that's worthwhile noting, and I think, those referendums did pass for a large number of the constituents here. Then their property taxes will be going up for the school referendum in Sunset Ridge, as well as the Park District.
Thousands.
And I think it's considerable. I know for some people it's not, but for us on a family with a budget, that's a considerable increase for us. And I think putting another burden of another 1% on top of us would be a massive burden, so.
Okay. All right, let's continue on. So I'm going to just cover off a few more items. We're going to talk about the school districts, and we're an area where, well, I'll get to that in just a second. So, okay, moving on. So just circling back to what we talked about originally, what is the goal here that we're trying to create? And that's really to revitalize our village core. It is to continue to, as best we can, implement the 2040 comprehensive plan. We're setting aspirational goals and guidelines. This is not intended to be a design, structure where we propose a plan that says, okay, on this corner we're going to have X, and on that corner we're going to have Y. What we need to do is open this up to developers and to development and let them decide that, cobbling a couple parcels together makes sense for whatever that it is they want to do. So having general guidelines without a lot of specificity is how we have to approach this. And this does require a partnership between the owners of properties and the village. So I believe that we have more leverage when a developer comes to us and says, we're interested in putting something here and we'd really like to have TIF dollars for that. Not unlike how Plan and Zone follows our guidelines for zoning, architecture covers how we believe the community should look. This is another tool for us to really shape the future of Northfield and what is here and what properties look like. So I think I'm just going to, in interest of time, move on, Patrick, to... I do want to show you these pretty pictures because I just, again, this is more of Francisco Gonzalez Polito's designs for Northfield, and I think they're very exciting. And if he had a vision, I think about how many other architects will have other visions and how many developers will come in and show us some really exciting potential for projects. So, Patrick, I'll let you move on from here.
Sure. So let me share some information that President Mendrick and I had a meeting with the school districts to talk a little bit about what their primary concerns were. And while there weren't specific asks that came out of those meetings, my takeaways were the three primary really concerns with the village's TIF district, or really any TIF district, is that when I talk about property tax increases, and I'll get a little bit in the weeds for a second here, there's a base tax levy, it's called PTEL, that is a cap, and we are supposed to levy no more than cap. We talked earlier about being home rule. If the cap set within the consumer price index is 3%, we levy 3%. However, there's a provision in the property tax code that allows communities to levy for what they call new property, new growth that comes on. So what will happen with many taxing agencies, schools, park districts, libraries, and villages, is they'll levy above the cap. And they're trying to capture this new property growth because it's an additional amount above the cap that's special. The great thing for the schools is, and others, is when that new property growth comes in, the next year your base that you levy your 3% on is larger. So there's an exponential growth as that new property keeps getting added year after year after year. So communities, districts that are tax capped will try to capture that new growth to make sure that they don't fall behind. The second piece from the school districts was they're concerned that if this TIF district is successful and there's a lot of growth and a lot of new students generated, not having access to that new property component and then future capital needs related to the additional students could put them in a bind, because then they wouldn't have the general property tax revenue to be able to support the additional needs without going to referenda. So there's concern about that piece. And finally, there's concern that, well, once Northfield does it, there's going to be other communities doing it too. So I'll hit the first two responses here as I go through this data. In fact, seeing my laptop will not do it. So I talked a little bit about PTEL and the new property levy. As I said, it's not subject to the tax cap, so it's a way to capture that new growth, and it compounds year after year. This new growth is what TIF is all about. So in the defined area by community, the new property gets directed to the village to be reinvested in the district. And that investment is, you'll hear the phrase, it's a spin of the flywheel. It gets that engine turning, in our case, an economic engine, that continues the reinvestments and puts us in a good spot to be able to invest more in the district. It's not uncommon to have questions saying, well, maybe we should leave a new planned development out of the district. It's an option, but the problem is when you do that, that new growth doesn't help give the TIF district the spark it needs to get started to start new growth. So often when TIF districts are started, it's around new properties being planned because it helps get you that head start. At the end, when a TIF district is ended, whether it's at the end of the 23 years or sooner, that new growth goes back to all the taxing agencies. And school districts, others look at how much growth happened during that time, and they adjust their levies accordingly to try to capture that new growth going forward. So to get an idea of what the impact is of that new growth, we've done a little bit of research. And as we look at this, and I will be very forthcoming that this is an unusual EAV growth year, and we think there's going to be a fair amount of revenue coming to the three school districts. New Trier's likely to see in a ballpark of an extra $1.5 million in new growth. Sunset Ridge and Avoca school districts, about $130,000. This is a much higher number than their typical, but it's because there's been lots of new growth area throughout the communities they serve. So the natural question as I'm looking at this is, okay, so if we take this TIF district and that new growth is no longer available to them, what's the impact? So what would these numbers been? The answer is zero. Because there hasn't been new growth in the last year within the proposed TIF district, the school districts are still seeing these numbers, but it's not being helped, the new growth, by the proposed TIF district, because it hasn't happened. And we really haven't been seeing much of that qualifies for a long period of time. So again, if we can capture that new growth through a TIF district, reinvest in the area, get it strong, performing well on its own, the engine firing, the board at the time can then decide, is it time to declare surplus or is it time to disband the TIF district because it's accomplished its goals? So that's one of the reasons we think that this isn't too concerning, but also these new growth numbers are not a high percentage of the district's overall levy. I understand why they need new growth. It helps compound over years. It makes perfect sense. But the second concern was, what about these things happening and kind of putting us in a financial bind? The school districts are doing a good job managing their resources. I think the residents know that, and that's why they entrusted them with being able to do more. But New Trier is sitting with about $84.5 million in the bank. This data is audited numbers of the end of their fiscal year last year. Sunset Ridge, about $18.5 million, and Avoca, almost $5 million. This new property growth that already is not coming out of the district should not make a substantial change to what the districts are seeing because they're not getting it now. So the second part of that is, but what if? What if the TIF district is successful? And I'm sorry, the last slide there is, I've done some research. I cannot find any news stories or reports about a TIF district being created by a village and it tanking their school district. So if anybody sees that, please let me know and I'll make sure to correct this, but I have not been able to find it. So it is possible that if this district is created and if it is successful, in 7, 10, 15 years, you've got a lot of new growth happening and you've got a number of new school-age children. That's a big concern for the schools because they haven't been getting that new growth that's intended to offset those future capital needs. The good news is if that does happen, the TIF district will be maturing isn't the right word, but developing well enough that you'd be seeing surplus. And the village has the option to be able to say or declare that there's a surplus in the funds within the TIF district and refund portions of that surplus. When that happens, X dollars get sent back to Cook County, and Cook County disperses it to all the taxing districts based on their levy amounts. We've talked a little bit about the provisions in the TIF Act that reimburse districts for school-age children costs. It doesn't hit 100% of their costs in most cases, but that's another potential funding source. Additionally, the village has its own funds that it could use if the school districts are in need and talking through that process. And I'll get into a little bit here toward the end of this presentation about things that you could consider putting in a potential ordinance that would help memorialize this board's intent. Then in that 7, 10, 15 years, future boards, if you move forward on this, would see what the goal was, and it would hopefully give the taxing bodies a little bit of comfort in what's being proposed.
Okay, so just a couple more slides, everyone. So thank you for hanging in there with us. So, I think the question is this a yes for TIF or is this a maybe? What is this? But I think this is our first real chance as a board to discuss it. And I think that this does continue to invest in a stronger Northfield. We keep pace with our neighbors. We have the similar amenities that people are now leaving Northfield to get. I believe, as we've laid out here, it's a financially responsible approach. We don't have options to, we don't have room in our budget to help developers in the ways that we're talking about without this approach. And it supports our comprehensive plan. And again, I go back to the things that people keep asking us about, walkability, gathering places, new restaurants, all of the things that I think all of us have heard back and forth. So the last section, Patrick and I discussed because we really felt like we had to proactively talk to our fellow taxing bodies about how this partnership can work. And we realize that it is a partnership, that we are asking other taxing bodies to shoulder some of the responsibility for this. So Patrick went to work. What we're next going to talk about is some items that could be in the ordinance at some point when we decide, if we decide to vote on that, and ways that we can help share some of the burden with our other taxing bodies. We did share some of this with the school districts specifically in a letter that I sent to the school board presidents on July 10th. We haven't had a response back yet to that particular letter, but I'm imagining here from some of the comments that the board is reviewing those things as we all are. So I'll let Patrick work through those, and then we will be at the end of the presentation.
So, as President Bender mentioned, we've been trying to figure out things that we could do to help memorialize the intent of this board, should you decide to move forward, to send a clear message to future boards about the needs of the districts. So I'm going to go through these bullet points, and at the end, we'll ask if it's something that you'd like to see us try to work in. I need to work with legal counsel because I don't have buy-in from them yet about how these should be exactly worded, but I'm trying to give you the concept of what we're trying to achieve rather than the legal wording. So first and on the list is working with the districts to determine what capital needs they have coming up because of TIF. And wrapping into that is letting them know if a new development is proposed. And this is throughout the village. So this won't be just the TIF district. Is if somebody comes to us and fills out a planned unit development application, and it's going to be 10 or more housing units, we want to make the schools, the park districts, everybody aware of it once it's public information. Also including a phrase or a provision when an enabling ordinance that says at year 11, the conclusion of year 11, you'll do a comprehensive review of the TIF district to determine if it can be terminated earlier. I spoke earlier about getting the spark or the early jump start and getting increment coming in. Having that puts you in a position to be able to do an early review to see if a termination is warranted. If it's not, telling the board constituted at that time, then they need to do another review in 5 years. Again, the annual meetings, it's really a requirement that I'm recommending because it keeps us on the same page as we're talking about budgeting, planning, and what the needs are, looking at student projections. It keeps us working together in the future as a way to start planning forward to see what the needs of the community are. And then the next piece of this start to kick in a little bit with the park districts. Very similarly, regular meetings, looking at 5-year capital plans, looking for opportunities for joint purchasing and finding additional ways to work together and reduce expenses through partnerships. One of the things asked about the park districts is we have an interesting provision in our code about the dedication of land to park and school districts based on a development greater than 5 acres. It's one I had not seen before, but it's something the village had put in code. The park districts have asked us to look at what do the neighbors do, what's common, what is a more general provision of, call it an impact fee that could be put in place. This ordinance would say that the board is going to send the Plan Commission on a fact-finding exhibition to go look at that and then make recommendations back.
Okay. And the last thing that I want to ask you all to consider, because it, no matter how many different ways we say it, it still seems to be a rumor in this community that we are bringing a casino to downtown Northfield. As bizarre as that might seem, it is something that continues to come up. And we've already voted, twice now that we're not interested in that. It is not a permitted use in our village code. But I would like us to add a provision in the ordinance, if we get that far, that there will be no funds directed towards gaming or the implementation of casinos in Northfield. So All that to say, I'd like to get a little feedback again from you all if you think we're headed down the right path, if there's anything else that you want to add. I would imagine that this discussion will continue with our taxing bodies as we move along in this process. But does this generally feel good to you? Anything else anyone wants to add?
Yeah, I don't think add. I think thank you for putting together this presentation. I think most of the trustees are doing their own homework, but this was, in my opinion, well put together, thoughtful, and gives us more to think about. But as I think about the entire concept, Tracy, it's sort of a puzzle, right? It's not just the TIF district. It's broader than that because we've got so much more in the village. And the TIF can allow us to reach our full potential in our business district. That's not going to get there on its own. Or if it will, it's going to take a long time. And I don't think we have that time to do it. And that's why I think heading down this path and evaluating this is valuable for everyone. It's not just for the district. It's great for businesses, but it's great for our homeowners. Because if we have a robust downtown, more robust than today, the value of your property will go up. Not dollar for dollar, but it will go up. It will be more valuable. So I see this as an important tool that we can utilize outside of raising property taxes directly, because all those liabilities are real and they're not going away.
Okay.
Patrick, can we get a copy of this presentation? Because we didn't have it, so that we can also look at it after this meeting?
Absolutely. We'll put it on the TIF webpage, so sometime before noon tomorrow it'll be up.
Okay, and then the next thing that I want to clarify, and I think Tracy will help with this, is that, I've heard a lot of people, when you talk about the 2040 plan, a lot of people feel that the 2040 plan means that by 2040, all the plans that are in that plan and all the buildings and all the structures is what we're trying to do. And I don't think that's exactly correct. I think people feel like that you want to knock everything down, and by 2040, this is what we want to see. And I've heard that be asked of me, that is the 2040 plan mean that all this is going to happen by 2040? And that's not the plan, correct?
Yeah,
mean,
I
obviously
think, thank you, Trustee Orth, for adding that, because, I've been asked what success looks like of a TIF district. And while we have really large numbers in there of $175 million in growth potential, I don't imagine a Northfield where every single property in the TIF district is developed. That I don't believe, it's certainly not my goal. I don't think anybody sharing the dais with me right now that that's their goal. So one of the reasons why we talk about this 11-year review process is to say that maybe in 11 years we've gotten enough development. We've gotten the restaurants, we've done a few of the things, we've gotten the library under roof, the Skokie Valley Trail has come through, we've developed Mariano's, where we can really, and it again likely won't be us, but it lets a future board understand the reasons why we made the decisions we made on, in July, August, and September of 2026. And it gives us a really important look back, not unlike how we talked about property taxes, and that, we made a pledge and every board has done it. And I really hope that this will be something that, again, if this goes forward, we can do. And I just think it's really important. It's the best we can do to tie the hands of future boards, but I think it's the responsible decision to look at how much development is enough for our community. Okay, so anyone else?
Just a quick question. The add-ons from the previous slide, when would those be under official consideration?
What I'd like to do is, if there's a consensus of the board, I'd like to, at the next joint review board meeting, indicate that there's a willingness of the board to include those in the draft ordinances. At your public hearing, the draft ordinance, if I remember correctly, will be put forward and discussed at the public hearing. That's when they would be out and included in that draft for review.
And so the joint review board would have an opportunity to discuss these sort of add-ons, as I'm calling them, or as you call them?
Yes, and I went through a very similar bullet list with them during the Joint Review Board meeting, and we're just waiting to hear back from comments on if the districts find it helpful or not.
Have you heard, is there a date for the next Joint Review Board meeting yet?
Good segue. Okay, so just so we understand where we're headed here, we talked about the desire to add additional terms to the ordinance. We'll be sharing that draft ordinance with the JRB. Again, school board, parks, library, let us know what you're thinking. We're happy to continue to consider those things. The next JRB meeting is scheduled at this point for August 13th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Many people have asked why we do that, and I'll just, again, give you a little reasoning for why it's during the day. The general person sitting at the table at the joint review is the administrative staff person in each of these taxing districts. So in the interest of, their jobs, we have generally scheduled those meetings for, the regular work hours. So that's why they're scheduled in the afternoon. The public hearing that is already on the books is August 25th. It begins at 7 p.m. I believe I can also say we are going to sit here and talk and listen to what residents have to say and continue to discuss things. That will be the first opportunity for us to make a motion and a second to move forward with the ordinance and potentially vote on that at our September board meeting. But again, I don't want to get ahead of us. Clearly, we've had some discussions here about what is next, and we'll keep doing that. So,
I just had one question. At the public hearing, was it your turn?
I was looking your direction and not his, so you get to go first.
I just want to make sure, because I do care about the partnerships, and I know our intent is we all want what's best. The school boards want what's best for their school districts. The park board wants what's best for their, and we want what's best for our community. And I think that, we have some of these ordinances and terms that we looked at tonight, but I think obviously at the JRB meeting, might be more discussion about those ordinances and discussions of, can we meet a little bit somewhere else? Will we have the ability at the public hearing in August to discuss those? Cool, thank you.
And the JRB meeting is going to be in this room?
Yes.
And is there any reason in the world why we can't live stream that like we do everything else in this room with those meetings? That's been a huge concern and talk about transparency. I see no reason why we couldn't. We have the facility, we changed everything. Why can't we stream that meeting and record it for those that can't make it? Because it's at 2 o'clock on the 13th. And there's a lot of people on vacation, taking their kids back to college, et cetera, et cetera.
Patrick, I will leave it to you to have that discussion with the chair of the JRB and see what they have, what Mr. Johnson has to say about that.
Okay.
All right.
I have a couple comments. First of all, the audio recording was great. I could listen to that and figure out what everybody was saying for one side of it. But I want to call you out a little bit on, well, it's not ridiculous. There's an audio recording. You can listen to it. The comprehensive plan, the only thing I'll say on that, we keep saying 2040 plan, comprehensive plan. I think we need to also mention sidewalk plan, HAP road committee, improvement plan. I mean, all of these plans, this helps all of those. I would hate that all that work for years and years has gone in vain, right? So I think we really need to think about all the plans and commissions and things we've had over the years as part of this. Patrick, I have a question for you, and then I have a couple for the attorney, so be ready. For the schools, do we inform the schools when new homes are built? Just out of curiosity, because there are about, 10 vacant lots right now that are being, I know I've got a couple in my area that are being built up.
We do not. So if there's a vacant lot that has a new home proposed to it, we don't notify.
Because I'm going to make a generalization. I'm assuming school-age children will be moving into those houses as they're built, more than likely. But for the attorney, one thing that we've heard from from residents, or I've heard quite a bit, is the idea of going to a longer TIF. Can you explain, if it's over 23 years, doesn't that take an act of the state legislature? I mean, there's some crazy process for that, right?
Yeah. The term of a TIF is tied to the bond, which is 23 years. And that's only if you're going to issue bonds anyway, but the TIF cannot go beyond 23 years. If you wanted to go beyond 23 years, you have to go to the General Assembly to get up to a 12-year extension.
Okay, yeah, and that's interesting in its own right, because, well, I'll just keep quiet on Springfield and what's going on down there in general. The other question I have for the attorney side of it, so one ordinance we talked about is just inform. What about the idea of, for every 5 students that are newly enrolled from the TIF district, or 10 students, or, I mean, some sort of ratio, ordinance that says if a certain amount of students move into a TIF district, therefore we figure out how to, I call it like a make-whole provision, I don't know another way to call it, but like, is that possible in the way I mean, I'm thinking of this as like legal text, I'm trying to figure out how you would write something.
The statute has some guidelines on how you can structure basically providing a financial stream to the schools, other taxing jurisdictions who are impacted by development activity in the TIF. Whether that's in an ordinance or an intergovernmental agreement is something our office needs to discuss further with Patrick and staff.
So you're saying there's a chance, it's possible, so there's things we can do. That's I think probably the most important thing I've heard from school-age parents is how do we make sure that this kind of works to not harm kids. Perfect, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, any other questions from the trustees? All right, may I have a motion and a second to adjourn the committee of the whole
Motion to
meeting?
adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we will restart at about 10 minutes to 8, so everybody can get a